bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening. How you doing? Fade to Black. That's right. You know that. That's why you're here. Today is Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. Let's do this, man. I am ready. Help support the show. Get your Faded Black T-shirts. Links are below. You know what to do. 2 shirts, 2 ways to get them. Click on the links below. Earlier today, before we get started, our guest tonight is Bill Howard, and we're going to be talking about Encounters, the complete interviews. We got season 1, season 2, a new series that he's working on, some films, and another series that is a couple of series. So we're going to be talking about all of that tonight with Bill. But before we get started, earlier today, I was talking about this aircraft that I have found, and it's a B-58 Hustler. And I did that. I saw it originally. I didn't see it. I just saw a reflection of something out in the desert near Edwards. And I found it on Google Maps, and it turns out to be a B-58 Hustler that is sitting out in the middle of nowhere. And very difficult to get to, and I'm going to make an effort to see if I can go and get up close to this plane. Anyway, it's sitting out there derelict out in the middle of the desert. It's pretty cool. But it's on Edwards Air Force Base property, and it's tough to get to. It is, it's a no trespassing high security area. You can't even go to Street View on Google. Can't do it. It won't let you do it. So anyway, while I was doing that, after the news today, when I was talking about that, I was scanning around the area and wanted to go back out there and check it out. And I found 3 other planes, but these were at a now closed aircraft museum. And not that far from me, 7 miles, I think, or something like that. So I went out there. That was incredible. It was also fenced off. Couldn't get to, but I could see the planes from the street. And I've fully, I'm going to go out. They have 3 giant planes out there, and they used to have a bunch. The museum now is closed. But it's at an airstrip out in the middle of the desert. I love living in the Mojave Desert. Stuff like this is everywhere. And I'm going to go do this tomorrow. So I'm going to post pictures tomorrow of these 3 giant planes out at this. It's in the middle of the desert. I can't even remember what it's called. I think it's called Museum of Aerospace in Lancaster. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, and it's at an airstrip. You can look it up. I'm gonna go out there tomorrow. Well, I was out there today. Anyway, very cool stuff. Just out there looking for them aliens and finding this stuff instead. It's pretty cool. I also found an abandoned runway, and more on that later. All right, tonight we have Bill Howard with us. I just mentioned we're going to talk about Encounters, the complete interviews. It's a 6-part series with interviews with alien abductees, with season 2 having another 6 episode premiering soon. His next project is Something Walks in the Woods Part 2, The Cabin and the Plantation. Now that's got my interest right there. He is a commercial sports landscape and corporate photographer and filmmaker based in North Carolina. He's currently editing and producing Negotiators Luxe, a reality TV series for the Reveel Entertainment Network. He has thousands of published images in media such as Sports Illustrated, Golf Digest, ABC, NBC, CBS, and ESPN, as well as several magazine covers. His links to his website are below over on social media and on our website. And I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Bill Howard. There he is, live from North Carolina. How you doing, Bill? Everything good?
I'm doing great. And I have to say, I travel a lot with my photography, and when COVID hit, everything kind of shut down, especially sports. In fact, I was covering the ACC basketball tournament when COVID shut that down, and I got hooked into doing vacant land photography, and the Mojave is just mind blowing. Love it out there. One of my big jobs, first time I'd ever been to California, I shot 60 properties in the Mojave Desert. Is it California City that's right outside?
Yeah. That's not too far from me. Yeah.
So maybe 15 or 10 miles from there, maybe. And if I was doing the filmmaking and been into this whole UFO, UAP phenomena, I definitely would have been doing night sky surveys while I was there.
Yeah. So where you're talking about, that's in the middle of all the madness, California City, because right there, that's where I live. So okay. I'm just south of there. I'm in Palmdale. But right there you have Mojave, the town of Mojave. You have the spaceport that is there. Where Virgin Galactic and all of that research is done. Paul Allen's giant strato.
I got some photos of the Virgin Galactic plane while I was there too. Sure did.
Yeah. It's all that's there. Then you head south a few miles. You've got Edwards and their test facility, and that's the crazy nutty stuff that goes on there. And then right south of there, another 7 miles is where I'm at. And next to my house, where I live, is Lockheed Skunk Works and Air Force Plant 42, Northrop Grumman, NASA. They're all based right down the street. I get literally from my house, because the speed limit in the neighborhoods is 55 miles an hour out here in the Mojave Desert. So you could be at Skunk Works from my house in like 90 seconds. And there it is, the skunk right on the side of all of the buildings there. How did you? Let's like get straight to the meat of the matter. You were in the middle of this madness when you're out here shooting properties. But how do you make that transition as an award-winning a photographer doing corporate work in sports into Little Green Men? That seems like a pretty hard left turn.
I guess it is. Well, I really enjoyed doing time lapses. That's kind of where my photography transitioned, and that's what got me into filmmaking is doing the time lapses. There's another Californian, Michael Shainbloom. He's a fantastic time lapse photographer, and that was kind of my dream, was kind of do some stuff like he did. But in the process, I kept learning video, and I helped a friend of mine with a short film called The Tramping Ground. And then I'm also a writer. I wrote an outdoors column for 16 newspapers and did columns for various outdoors, hunting and fishing type magazines, things like that. And so I decided to write my own screenplay and not do a short. There was no monetary avenue with shorts. So I decided to do a feature, and I wrote The Great Dismal, which is, it's currently on Tubi and Amazon, amongst others. And it did really well as far as the script. The film, not quite as good, but the script did well, but I was learning through it. And we filmed it's a Bigfoot story. We were filming during the winter, and then everything turned green really quick on us. So we had to halt production and wait till the winter to come back. And in the process, I wanted to learn how to distribute things. And there was a person I spoke with several years prior. I was shooting a calendar for a company, and long story short, he was an ex-CIA agent, and he started telling me some stories and kind of warned me about like the Four Corners area, as far as UFOs, aliens, missing people, that type thing. And I decided to make a film as if I was interviewing 3 people, but they told his story. And that was called The Incredulous Case of Aliens, the U.S. Government, and Arnie Smith. And it's a mockumentary. It's a fake documentary, but it's based on this talk that I had with this ex-CIA agent. And the UFO and alien community started reaching out to me, and they were telling me their stories because they thought this film was real. And I explained to them it was not, but your story is very interesting. And with the government coming out about, UFOs or otherworldly crafts and that type thing, I started thinking, well, what about, we're seeing the stories from the military personnel, but what about the people that said they've been abducted, or they've, had these one-on-one experiences with aliens or interdimensional beings, that type thing? Maybe their stories, aren't that far-fetched after all. And I was doing some commercial work throughout the U.S. 2 Octobers ago, and so I reached out to the communities and said, "Hey, I'm interested in interviewing you all on camera. If and we're gonna hear your story. There's not going to be, I'm not going to go in there as a skeptic and try to tell people how crazy you are. It's going to be quite the opposite. I want to show people that, hey, you're not crazy. These stories may not be that far-fetched after all. And let's show other people that may have experienced this that, hey, they're not the only ones." And that's where Encounters came from.
It's kind of, I appreciate that approach, because that's exactly what I try to do. I want to have a forum where not only the guest can have a place where they can just, let it out, right? And tell us what went down from their point of view. I'm going to listen. I'm going to learn. So is the audience. And the audience can also, and this happens in different areas of social media with Fade to Black too. It's the exact same thing that you're mentioning here, Bill, which is it's a safe space. Don't bring your garbage. Don't come in and politicize things or finger point or name call or anything like that. You do that, you're out. This is a place where people can gather and share not only their experiences, but hear from others, because they need that support. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And so when you do that, you found out something, didn't you? People will open up.
That they will. And I mean, some very fascinating stories. So I've interviewed 10 people. Well, let me rephrase that. I've interviewed 12 people, but 3 of them are a family. In fact, their sighting was in California. But they'll be on episode or on season 2, which it should be released anytime now. In fact, we may release both seasons early on the Reveel Entertainment Network. But there's a lot of commonalities in their stories as well. And that was kind of one of the things I was looking at. I'm a big fan of, George Norrie, Coast to Coast, his approach, the way Art Bell approached, they're kind of the grandfathers into this genre, as far as letting people tell those stories. And again, that's what I wanted to do, is let's hear their stories. Everybody I interviewed, I don't feel like any of them were lying to me. Now, if what they told me was the truth, I can't tell you. I wasn't there, but I believe they believe. And we're in a world where there's so much misinformation and disinformation, and there's also this psyche that, once you get, they may have seen something the first time that's just blown their mind, and now everything is kind of have them questioning reality. So it goes from one sighting to 10 sightings, or one encounter to 10 encounters, where only one of them was real. But that's, again, one of the things I want people to kind of understand, that it's a very delicate subject. When you have had an experience like some of these people have, it's life altering. And we talk about PTSD from war. It's the same thing.
We're getting a little bit of some video lag with you. I'm not sure. Your audio is fine, but the video is it's not buffering, but it's like skipping. So I don't know if we should adjust camera settings right now, or if we should just move forward. So let's just move forward. When we get to the break,
we'll play with it unless it stops. Yeah.
Everybody just deal with it. The audio is fine. Remember, see, here's the thing. You just mentioned Coast to Coast. I hosted Coast to Coast for 7 years. And while I was at Coast, I just left last year or the year before, something like that. But Coast is a radio show, no video, right? So I'm just in there. It's the microphone and the audience. I can look and I don't have to worry about how I dress. Did I shave? Did I shower? Is there something in my teeth? Whatever. I don't have to worry about any of that. And it used to be Fade to Black was only audio. I added video because people were asking for it maybe 3-4 years ago, something like that. But for the first probably 6 years, it was audio only. And now people complain when the video's not good. It's like, man, the radio show. Close your eyes. Oh, man. You just can't win, Bill. You just can't win. And now, can we back up to Ernie for a second? Yeah. Ex-CIA, but what started that conversation with him? If you were in another world, what was it that started this conversation about UFOs?
So I was shooting a calendar for a nonprofit group about, and I don't know if I need to say exactly what it's about, veterans of the Cold War. And this particular person was in Ohio. And he recognized my accent was not Ohioan, I guess. And he asked me where I was from, and I told him North Carolina. And he said, well, why are you in Ohio shooting this? Well, I'm shooting the whole calendar. I've got 15 of you that I'm shooting of these subjects, and I'm going to finish up in Nevada. And he was like, well, are you going to stay in the Four Corners area? And I was like, I guess depends on if it's nighttime when I go through there. I will be passing through that area, but I don't know if I'll stay there overnight. And he said, well, don't. He said, people that are not from the area are the ones that go missing. And, I didn't know this guy from Adam, to be honest with you. I've just spoke with him a little for just a very short amount of time. And in fact, to go further back into this, when I first got to his house, he showed me around and introduced me to his wife. He had a landline. He did not have cell phones, but he had a landline in this huge box hooked to the landline. And it was, it was one of the first things I noticed when I saw it. And then he was showing me some things, and like he showed me some pictures from when he was working at this nuclear base or nuclear plant, not base. And he had a picture of him and I guess I can say it. He had a picture of him and John Glenn. But it looked like a meet and greet. He was telling me how they were tight friends when Glenn was living, but it looked like a meet and greet, Glenn was in a suit, arm, around each other, that type thing. So when we're outside is when he's asking me about if I'm gonna be in the Four Corners area. Well, he had me lay my phone. He had me cut my cell phone off, lay it on the grass, and we walked out into a cornfield about 50 to 75 yards. And the way the story went is he worked at this nuclear plant. He was friends with John Glenn, and John Glenn had power. He was an astronaut, a senator. He could do things, and he had heard stories from John that haven't been made public. Obviously, if they're friends, they talk. And so he wanted to be more involved on that side of it. And we're talking about spacecraft and aliens. And so John got him into the CIA. Now, anybody that's in law enforcement understands the CIA doesn't look for missing people. His job was to look for missing people in the Four Corners area. I forget the name of the base that he was out of, but I think it was in Oklahoma, if I remember right, whatever base is there. And he would be presented with the names of a missing person. And if it was on his list, then the CIA would take over that investigation, and it would end with, the Mexican drug cartel, coyotes, anything from like the Oregon Trail game, as far as just the environment killed the person, that type of thing. But the list was people that the government supposedly knew had been abducted by aliens. Now,
really?
Again, I don't know this guy from Adam, so I'm sitting here. He's obviously some type of prepper. He's got this box on his landline so that he can tell if his phone is being traced. Had me lay my phone down and all this. He had also told me that by the end of August, the government was going to release information that UFOs were real. This was I think it was either late June or early July, but this was like on a Tuesday. That Friday is when the Pentagon said, released the Navy footage and said, yeah, we don't know what these are. I mean, he knew. And when we went back to the house, we're going through some more things, and he pulls out a flight badge from the space shuttle when John Glenn went up when he was like 75.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like one that was stiff that you would buy as a souvenir. It still had threads in it where it had been cut off. And he had said John had given that to him. And then he pulled up another picture, and he's just kind of passing that photo around pretty quick. And I said, hold on, let me see that. And I pull it back. Well, John Glenn is on his back deck at a birthday party, so he wasn't lying about that part. He was friends with John Glenn. And then, like I said, 3 or 4 days later, the Pentagon, I'm listening to it on the radio while I'm driving out west, that the Pentagon says there's, UFOs, and they don't know what they are. That's kind of, it'll blow your mind. Just how much does this guy really know?
Yeah. And so he takes you out into the cornfield where there's no surveillance. That's
Right.
kind of clandestine too. That's kind of freaky.
And he owns this field. So he's got like 150, 250 acres. So his closest neighbor is like a half a mile away. He's as, by himself as you can possibly be.
Yeah.
And still have a convenience store down the road.
Tell you right now, Bill, nobody's walking Jimmy Church into a cornfield. Not unless I got 3 or 4 of my buddies with me, man, because I've seen that movie, man. I've seen that movie.
Exactly. I don't know where this guy's going with what he's about to tell me, but, my goodness, everything came out truthful that he said that I could follow up on. Obviously, I can't follow up. I can't submit a FOIA request and to the CIA, hey, do you have a list of abductees by alien?
And they do. We'll see. One day we're going to get all of that stuff. There is, I caught this on your website, so I just want to jump back to this. I haven't seen it, but about a letter from ex-CIA, I don't know, that you went down.
Okay, so that's
is that
the
from him?
incredulous case of aliens aliens, U.S. government, and Arnie Smith.
Okay,
The letter.
Yes.
The letter is I made the guy that I talked to dead. So I told his story. But
Okay. Because that was my question. Are we talking about the same person here?
Right. Yeah, we are.
So
he as far as I know, he's not dead, but I can't interview him. I mean, the guy is obviously paranoid about everything. He's not going to go on camera. And I'm sure he would not appreciate me to call him on the phone and say, "Hey, can you tell me more about that story in front of the camera?" He's not going to let me do that.
So, have you seen Spinal Tap?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how to make a mockumentary then?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. Hey, they're shooting another one, by the way. They're working now. Yeah. It's when did that come out? That came out in what, 81, 82, 83? 83, I'm thinking. So it's like Spinal Tap 40 years later, and they come out of retirement again. Something like that. It's hopefully it's going to be great. But back to the incredulous case. So Ernie, this is a mockumentary. Dead Ernie is actually alive and well, and he's the guy that took you into the cornfield.
Well, actually, the way I've got it set up is to tell this guy's story. I have one actor that plays a scientist that used to work with nuclear engineer. And then I had a CIA agent that used to work with the guy that died. And then Arnie Smith is an actual abductee, not in real life, but he's an actual abductee to finish out the story with some of the things this guy told me, as far as, not every abductee stays missing forever. They just come back and they're thought of as being crazy.
Got it. It was the letter from the deceased insider. Was that letter?
You're going to get me in trouble here by talking to me.
I'm doing my best, man. I'm doing my best. This is not a mockumentary. But was there a letter, or was that just for the mockumentary?
That was my way of being able to tell his story. So, I mean, he gave me the scientific side of everything, the CIA portion of it, and then what happens to these abductees is how everything that he told me. And so that's why I had a nuclear scientist to kind of tell me
right
side of it. And so this letter just led me to the nuclear scientist and to the CIA agent. It also led me to, quote, a third person that had died from COVID. So I wouldn't be able to talk with them. But after I talked to the CIA agent, I have it where his phone goes off, or actually my phone goes off, even though I had it off, it starts ringing. And so the CIA agent leaves me, in disgust. I told you to cut it off. I did have it cut off. They know we're here. They know we're talking. Just look up the name Arnold Smith, Reno, Nevada. And he leaves the interview. Well, I start trying to find an Arnold Smith, and eventually I do find Arnie Smith, who had gone missing and come back. And then I interview that person, and he tells me about being abducted and what it's like out in space with these extraterrestrials.
This reminds me, and next you're going to tell me that's me. Maybe not. This reminds me of a series of photographs that were taken from a video that went around the internet maybe about a year ago. The interior of somebody's house, and from this video, and with pictures on the wall of, and one of them might have had a craft in it. But all of that was found out by accident. Because of man, this is your next movie. It was like it was like a real estate video of a house for sale, right? And so they're showing the house, and somebody went and freeze framed these frames and caught these images that were framed on the wall. I just said frame like 5 times for different reasons. That was weird. But that wasn't you. That's not part of the mockumentary. Yeah. And all of that was quite
interesting. You might have to forward that to me if you find it again.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. That was one of those rabbit hole afternoons. I love it when that happens. One click takes you somewhere else, and the next thing you know, back in the day, Bill. And when I say back in the day, I mean back in the day. All right, 1994, beginning of the internet, and there was a website out called UFO Mind, and it was the reason to even have the internet back then. AOL was just starting. Anyway, UFO Mind. Yeah, and it was a series of links, right? And so on the UFO subject, it was in alphabetical order, right? So started with like Area 51 or whatever, right? And all the way through, and there was, I don't know, a couple of thousand links, and then each link would take you to the names, and I spent months clicking and going, and back then there was like a few thousand websites, right? It was a whole different game back then. This was before search engines. This is like before Mozilla. It was that long ago. But I love those rabbit hole days when I used to do that and finding these images and the story behind it was one of those rabbit hole days. I have no idea how I found it, but you're reminding me of it now.
I was interested in, as a young boy, you're interested in dinosaurs and UFOs and things like that, right? So I want to say I may have been 9, 10, 11, something like that. And I live 45 miles east of Raleigh. Raleigh's the biggest city that's near me. And we would go clothes shopping in September for school, in Raleigh, because you just didn't have many clothing stores where we lived. This is dating way back. This was when drugstores, there was only one drugstore open on Sunday, and they would rotate which one would be open. You didn't have gas stations open on Sundays either. That's how old I am. But when we went to the mall in Raleigh, I went to the bookstore, and they had just released a paperback version of Project Blue Book. Now, a lot of it was redacted, but my parents ended up buying for me, and I would spend, it just night after night after night reading, each one. And of course, 99% of them were, the military said, the Air Force said it wasn't true, but just reading the accounts and then what the military said it was very interesting. And that was before you had a TV show called Project Blue Book and all that. Yeah.
And man, times have changed. There's 24-hour network cable streaming UFO content all day long, if that's what you want. Like last night, after the show, let's get to encounters. Last night after this show, I'm cooking, I'm doing my stuff, and finished working, and I go into my family room, click on the TV, and I don't know if it was Amazon or Netflix or whatever, but the suggested for you row comes up, and the first movie they're so inside of my head was When Worlds Collide. I was like, man, I haven't seen that forever. So I did. I watched that last night, and it's all you got to do is turn on your TV. That's all you got to do. Yep. That's all you got to do.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
So where did the idea for encounters come from?
Well, like I said, I had people reach out to me after they saw the incredulous case of people that had actual experiences, because again, the community, they're the ones that have had experiences. It's a case where they believe anybody's story at that point. For one, I think it makes them feel like they're connected. But there's very little skepticism from somebody that's had an experience. And so they thought this was completely real, and I had explained, no, it's just great acting by me. It's fake. It's based on what I've been told. It's anecdotal, but it's a script. I wrote the script, and I hired actors to play these parts. But I am very interested in hearing your story. And then as I kept getting these stories in, I was like, they need a voice. I mean, these people are begging to tell their story, and they're begging to tell their story to not only people that'll listen, but to people that just don't realize that this is the case. And these are, I mean, I'm talking medical doctors to IT professionals. They're not crazy people. They're real people. Just, if you were to drive down the street, it's your neighbors. These are your neighbors that have had these experiences, and they're not crazy. They're not loony. Something has happened at some point that they've experienced, and they want to get that story out. It's the coming out party. Instead of coming out sexually, they're coming out that, yeah, I woke up and there were 5 beings at the foot of my bed. And so I was like, let's do this. I travel the country, so I can hit, a lot of these spots, and I can get into these, these boards and these Facebook groups and say, hey, I'm coming to Wisconsin. If there's anybody that's in Wisconsin that's had interesting experience, I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to be on camera, I'll treat you respectfully on camera.
When you start to, which case was case number 1 that stood out? And were you formulating criteria for what you wanted to possibly capture on camera? Was there a certain aspect to this, or did you put 6 together right away? But what was the first one?
Yeah, actually, my initial, the initial process I was going to do, I just wanted to make a single documentary, and then I would pepper these interviews in it to support whatever case that I deduce after I have the interviews, right? Not quite Jeremy Corbell-ish type stuff, but a proper documentary. And as I started shooting more of the interviews, that's when I thought, I don't want people to think that this is scripted. I don't want people to think that I'm manipulating it. So let's do the entire interview. From the moment I cut on the camera and I'm sticking the mic on the person, the camera's rolling, and that's pretty much what you see. So this docuseries is different than anything you've ever seen. It's very raw, but it's raw on purpose because I want people to see that they're not having time to come up with their story as we're going. This is me asking questions, and I'm asking some of the questions you don't expect to hear. And I'll get back to your thing where you asked me which case kind of stood out. But for instance, when people tell me, you see it all the time on these interviews, yeah, the alien told me that I would be safe. Okay, when they said something like that to me, I'm going, how did they tell you? What kind of voice was it? Was it like a AI type voice? Did it have an English accent? Was it a baritone or was it a treble type voice? You're telling me they talked to you. What did it sound like? Was it your voice you were hearing? And every one of them, it wasn't an actual voice, like you and I talking here. It was kind of implanted in their head, not with their voice. Yeah, just a
voice.
I don't know how to explain it.
A voice in their head, like telepathy.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. The thing is, it's not a conversation with yourself like normal people have. I'll talk to myself in my head. The voice in my head is my voice. It's a different voice. It's a urging, more or less. It's a feeling they get in their head. And I ask them, have you ever been on LSD? Have you ever been on mushrooms? Have you done acid, whatever? And I ask them those type questions. So let's go ahead and get that part out of the way so that we can get to the nitty gritty of what happened to you. Now, the first interview I did was with a gentleman down in Ocala, Florida, and his name is Dave Baker, and he is the season finale for season 1. This episodes 5 and 6, and he kind of laid the groundwork for what was going on with everybody else I interviewed. In that, it's hardly ever a single experience. Once you've had it once, it seems like these experiences keep coming back. Not necessarily the exact same way, but Dave's it started from when he was in high school until maybe, I can't tell you the exact date off the top of my head now, but say 20 years ago now is when it stopped. He had an implant in his foot that he had removed. And when that was removed, that was the last time he had ever had any type of experience. But he had a dozen experiences in between. And I'm talking, one of the things that really stood out with him, he was in his kitchen with his wife and they were cooking. And so they have this bar and it's kind of got an opening into the living room or the den area. And while they're cooking, this light appears in the den and this being steps out of the light. Well, his wife gets startled and kind of falls back, and he takes off around the corner. And as he comes around the corner, the being steps back into the light and the light closes and, kind of like a portal. And they were kind of both dumbfounded by what had just happened. So they asked each other to describe what they saw. They both saw a being, but they both saw the being differently. One of them saw like the being was in a military type uniform. Well, that triggered. Okay, so are we talking about the U.S. military is involved, or are we talking time travel? What kind of feelings you get from it? And but it was separate from both of them. But the interesting thing came after this, and Dave was. He was a writer for a newspaper down there at the time, and he had he saw his wife was pulled over on the side of the road, so he pulled over. This is on his way home, and he knew the officer from the town they were in, and he walked up and Dave said, "What's going on?" He said, "Man, this lady, I got her speeding, but she is losing it," and she said there was somebody that was in her apartment and came out of this light type thing and came down the steps at her. And so she took off. And he said, "That's my wife." And yeah, they moved out of the apartment very shortly thereafter because while he was gone, she had come home and somebody was up in the top floor of their apartment and was coming down the steps. And, that was it for her. She was done. She didn't want any more part of it. We've had, out of the 10 interviews, I've had 3 of them that have had beings around. They described it almost identical. Beings around the bottom of their bed. One of them had been probed. And Dave, I told you, had the implant in his foot. And this was in Florida. Well, I had one of my other interviews, which was in Wisconsin, they were trying to implant something in his foot, and his fingerprints. I think it's either his fingerprint or his toe print had reversed. So, like, if the swirl was this way, it was the opposite way after his experience with these beings. He also saw an increase in his IQ of like 20 points after he had his experience. Many of them have described orbs that are very similar. And then my last interview for season 2, without giving too much away before you can watch it, she's a hybrid and has had hybrid children. And it's just fascinating hearing these stories. Again, now, is everything that I've heard the absolute truth? In their head, it is. I can't tell you. I'm not there. My job was just to, let them tell me their stories, and let's get it out there.
Now, isn't there a way? I've never heard the reversed fingerprint situation. That's new to me. Isn't there a way to check that?
I would suppose so.
I mean, I'd be all over that. I would. Yeah, I would get your. Your baby prints, right? what do you do with your baby?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Especially the younger generation. He's younger than you and I are. I'm assuming that you and I are around the same age. He would be somebody that could be our kid, for instance, maybe a little older. But that's also the kind of generation where you started seeing the handprints and thumbprints and footprints and the safety, the identisafe things they did with kids in schools. I would imagine that some of that was in there. Now, did I check it? No, I have not checked it. If I was doing a more conventional documentary and I wanted to play skeptic in it, yeah, I would have to go into some of that. That would only make sense.
Well, here's the problem that the UFO community has. We all have this problem, right? Lots of abductees, lots of contacts. I've had my situations too. All right. But I didn't get this T-shirt while I was on the craft, right? Everybody wants something like that. So you're on the craft. Did you go to the gift shop? Right? What did you bring back with you? We don't have that. We've got materials. We've got things that are being tested. I've had stuff sent to me in the mail. I've got alien metal. I do allegedly. But I don't have. It's not like I've got a USB drive from an alien craft, some kind of crazy alien technology. No, we don't have that, right? So something like this, a situation like this, with a thumbprint being reversed, that's pretty cool. And it's also easy.
It's the same thing with his IQ. You can look at what his IQ was in school and what it is now to see if it really did increase 20 points. Or actually maybe be closer to 30 points is what it increased by.
Yeah, I've got so many acquaintances and people that I know that have dealt with implants and have had them removed or they have disappeared. But the problem with that, I'm speaking on behalf of the UFO community. You know what the UFO community needs? They need one of those implants photographed and tested so we can look at it. And there's an issue with every single one. And maybe it's supposed to be that way. I don't know.
And with Dave, that's kind of what happened with him is he had a podiatrist remove the implant. And again, these are Dave's words. So this is anecdotal in that part, but it's his story.
Was it Dr. Lear?
Do I know?
Was it Dr. Lear?
No, whoever was in Florida near his hometown. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Dr. Lear was out here in California.
Yeah.
He was a podiatrist.
He was trying to grab the implant, and it would keep moving. And they finally did get hold of it and were able to cut it out. And they sent it off to see if it was cancerous, that type thing. And Dave said he would, the doctor told him he would hear back within about 2 weeks. Well, Dave said, 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, 4 weeks went by. So Dave went back to, check on it, see if he had heard anything. And he kept calling. He couldn't get anybody to answer. So he went to the office, and it was closed. The doctor was gone. No forwarding information. He says, so I can't tell you what it was. And sadly, as you're, what you were saying, that's what happens. Anytime there's evidence, there's something to keep the evidence from being there.
Yeah, it's always a step away. And when, just like you, with encounters, and I'm very curious about your life over the last 2 years, how that has changed too as well, because I know what happens when you're in this thing, especially doing what you and I do. But I have seen stuff. And I have seen stuff go down that others see differently, like, right, while they were cooking in the kitchen, right? And they see the alien in two different ways. That doesn't change the experience itself. And every time something like this seems to happen to a group of people, it's always just one step away from being photographed. It's one instant away from being videoed. If it is, it's not in frame. If it's that, and it could be Bigfoot. It could be a ghost, let alone, UFOs and ET. It's always one step away. It's crazy. I can't explain it.
And I will say this. Okay, so I'm a filmmaker. I'm a photographer. I have my camera on me everywhere I go. Especially, when I did this 2 Octobers ago, I had my cameras on me everywhere I went. I stayed in the Four Corners area overnight with cameras hitting the skies on purpose because I was told not to be there. So, it's got to be a good spot. Right around the Great Sand Dunes National Park. That's a hot spot. I went by Skywalker Ranch. I put the cameras up in the skies to try to capture the stuff. I shot out of Roswell. So you were mentioning how my last 2 years have been. This is where the interesting stuff comes from, in that I did not want to interfere with the people that I interviewed. I didn't want to interfere with their stories by telling my story. So that's another reason I kind of broke it apart, and we did the entire stuff. And then I'll just worry about a separate documentary later that's more conventional. I've got stuff captured. So there's been 9 things that I've seen, and I've got about 5 of them on camera. But even with the camera ready, sometimes these things are so fleeting that, the reason you have blurry footage, it's not like the stuff you see from Chile or that type stuff where, the phone is sitting there shaking, but it follows the object for 20 minutes. That's not how these things happen. There's not a UFO that's hovering over the White House in broad daylight for 20 minutes, 150 feet in the air. That's just not what it is. They're small, and they're fleeting. Yet by the time you get the camera out, it's gone. So I've got some of these, and I've used it. Some of them are on the cell phone. Some of them are on the camera that I've got in front of me here. But there's not, it's not where you're seeing a perfect shape of a UFO. Just like the jellyfish UAP that's become so popular over the last week and a half, you can't really see what it is. You see it, our mind tries to rationalize what we're seeing, and the closest thing is it looks like it's a floating squid. But that's the same thing with seeing lights in the sky. So these same lights that I've seen in the sky, these same orbs or objects that I've photographed and videoed, would I have noticed them had I not been doing this documentary? Would my mind have gone a different avenue?
Are you streaming HDMI on a DSLR now?
I'm streaming on a DSLR. It's a Nikon Z9 going through a USB-C cord.
Yeah. So that's the skipping. You're probably set up on.
I think it's probably the processor on the laptop.
I think you're at 4K.
I'm in 1080. I did check that, but
you did check that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, enough of that.
Sorry.
No. I was just.
I do think it's the laptop because I don't have problems with the desktop, but the desktop's in the office and it's almost 11 o'clock p.m. here.
Don't even worry about it. So, what about? Let's stay right here. Have you seen anything yourself? And the reason why I ask, I'm talking about in the last 2 years, because once your mind is opened up and not closed off to the idea, and you're looking, things tend to change, in my opinion. And so once you start to jump into the subject, have you seen something in the last 2 years?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I've had at least 9 of these, and I've got 5 of them minimum on camera.
Okay, well, you've always had my attention, but you really got my attention now. What was the first one? What was the paradigm shift? It's usually the first one.
All right, so my first interview was with the gentleman out of Ocala, which was Dave Baker. Then I interviewed Marion Morris, which is episode 1 of season 2. He was my second interview out of Charleston, South Carolina. Both of these people told me that now that I'm into this, I should watch out, right? So the vehicle I drive is now it's a Jeep, but was a Toyota FJ Cruiser. And the Cruiser has a built-in compass and inclinometer, however you want to say it, all that built in on the dash. And so when I leave Charleston, I'm going up Interstate 95, which is a north-south road, toward North Carolina. And I've never had any issues with it. Now, using GPS on the phone, with Google Maps, yeah, I've seen it where it's twisted me around at times, saying I'm going a different direction, that type of stuff. Well, I'm driving and due north, they're dead straight road, and now all of a sudden my compass is just starting to rotate and rotate and rotate. And so I grabbed the phone and videoed the compass acting all crazy. And at the same time, the GPS is starting to throw me 150 feet off the road, 300 feet off the road. Has me going south instead of north, which again, I've had that happen on Google Maps before, but I've never had the compass act that way. No magnets near it or anything like that. It's normal driving. And after 20 minutes, it stopped. It pinged right back to north, and I'm, has worked perfectly, since that October. So that was the first thing that just, it doesn't freak you out, but it does. You kind of like, oh, that was strange. That was really weird. So then, the next thing was when I was headed to the Four Corners area. It's at night, maybe 10 p.m. It's in October, so it's been dark for a few hours. And I see I'm north of the Four Corners area, and I see a meteor shoot by, a green streak. And I was like, that'd have been cool. That would have been cool to have on camera to go along with this documentary I'm trying to shoot, just for fun, right? But then, as I guess it was maybe another 10, 15 minutes, there's a mountain range to my right, and I see this light, which is a little bit brighter than a star. And I guess the thing that made me take notice of it is it just kept getting brighter and brighter and brighter. Almost like if you were to have a helicopter not very far away with a spotlight shining straight on you. But this is miles and miles away. Like I said, this is near the mountain range, and I'm probably 20 miles away. But it's abnormally bright. So the next thing I'm thinking, maybe it's an airplane that's landing, but then the light just dims and goes out. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. But then it comes back. Well, it does it 3 times, 4 times. The second time it did it, I pulled over and got the cameras out to record it, but it had dimmed out before I was able to get it. So I waited there maybe 5 minutes, never came back, put the gear back up, but I left the camera that is facing me right now. I put a 70 to 200 millimeter lens on it so I could kind of reach out with it, and left it in the passenger seat so I could grab it in a moment's notice. And sure enough, another 5-10 minutes, the light started. It kept getting brighter and brighter and brighter. I got the camera out and I started recording it. And I took a screenshot of the GPS of the Google Maps to mark my location and the direction I'm headed, and kind of have the angle of where I saw it. And that's important. If you see something like this, open up that map and get a screenshot of it so you can come back to it and you can report exactly where everything was, where you were headed, the direction you were facing, everything that you can. But I got that, and that was kind of unique. In fact, I had messaged a couple of the people that I interviewed and said, yeah, this was kind of weird. Later on in that trip, I'm in Arizona, and this is during the day. And I've seen something like this before in Nevada as well, outside of Las Vegas. And it very well could have been, but it reminds me of, like, say, a Walmart bag that has gotten some heat in it and has floated up really high. So I saw this, but it didn't look quite like a bag, but it's not a balloon and it's not an airplane, and it's just kind of free floating, but it's traveling from right to left. And I'm at the gas station. So as I see this, and it's about to go over the canopy of the gas station, and it's high. It's not 100 feet high. It's way high. I grab my camera and run to the other side of the canopy so I can try to get some video or at least some stills of it. And it was gone. Nowhere in the sky. So again, it could have been a bag that was 1,500 feet high. But it was something that you don't normally see. At least we don't have that in North Carolina. Out in the desert, I'm sure you probably see it more. So, I mean, that's 3 things right there on this one little trip that I'm doing. Of course, I say little trip is from the East Coast to the West Coast and back. I stayed with a friend, and I saw he was commenting earlier on here. I stayed with a friend out of Austin, Texas, and I showed him some of the stuff that I was seeing, and I captured something out of Austin, Texas. Now, I didn't have my camera ready, but I had the cell phone ready, and I was trying to video it. Well, the video would never start. It was grayed out, and I've never had that happen on my cell phone before. It just would not allow me to video. So I pressed the side button where it'll make the screen go black. I did that and pressed it back and tried to do it. It just wouldn't do anything. I did get 2 still images from it. And it looks like it's a metallic orb. Now, to try to rationalize it, you go, maybe it's a Mylar balloon. The thing is, it stayed exactly where it was. It wasn't going up or it wasn't swaying. It was just solid. Where I was, the light turned green, so I had to drive through. I was on the phone with my wife. She thought I'd been in a wreck. I told her, because of the way I was trying to get out to get pictures of it. Well, when I got out, I couldn't find it. So I turned around, drove back, came back to where I saw it, and it's not there. But it was there for a light cycle, staying in one spot. And then all of a sudden it's gone, even when I go back and try to retrace my tracks. So these are just some of the things that have happened. And again, is it something that I would have noticed, or is it something that I would feel anything like this about had I not been doing these stories? And I think that's part of what this community does too. Your normal rational self would go, it's just a mile or a balloon, and I would look away from it and never think of it again. But because everything's going on, I just kept my eye on it, kept my eye on it, kept my eye on it. But am I persuading myself that I'm seeing something, or is it something that is normal? You know, it was at a plastic bag in Arizona. Should I have really taken notice like I did? That I can't say.
Then it disappeared though. And that's pretty interesting. Okay, let's say it's a floating bag, and it could have been, but a floating bag doesn't disappear. You're gonna watch it for 20 minutes, float to the ground, maybe, but it's not.
That's what I saw in Las Vegas several years ago. I'm sure it was a bag, and what drew my interest there is I saw this thing floating around, but then I saw like 2 F-15s fly by. And I'm like, oh, that would be really cool if it was a UFO. And again, this is like 5-7 years ago when I saw this out of Las Vegas. But
I'll tell you, I haven't told the story very often, maybe once on the air, maybe twice. I'm at a Honda dealership in the San Fernando Valley, right? I'm coming out of the showroom, and I see, the Honda blue shirt dudes and dudettes. It's like 5 or 6 of them standing, all looking up at the sky. And the salesman's walking by me, and he goes, "Go check out the UFO." Right? It's in the middle of the day. It's like, what? So I go over to see what everybody's looking at, and I look up, and sure enough, man, it was crazy. I don't know. Okay, this is what I saw. It was a imagine. I mean, this is what I was picturing in my mind, like a faceted, like a disco ball, right? It's round with mirrors on it, high, 50 miles. 25 miles, I don't know, but high in the blue sky. And it's going from the south to the north, and it's spinning. You can see it, it was tiny. Bill, but you could see the sun, you know what I mean? And it was spinning kind of fast, like spinning. Anyway, and it starts to slow down, and we're all watching it, and it's coming across, and it's so high, and I go, it's a satellite, like a low altitude satellite, maybe. I wasn't thinking UFO, but this thing that was spinning, and it comes across, we're all guessing and stuff, and then it stops. Right above us, stops, and the spinning slowed, and then stopped. And we're like, wow, okay, so now it's just in one spot. It stopped spinning, and we watched it for this is 20 minutes, going across the sky. It was high up in the air. And then it went up and disappeared. And that took about probably 3 minutes, 4 minutes for it to finally, and then it was just gone. It was gone. Now, I walked away from that thinking I just watched, which I thought was really cool, like an NSA satellite get positioned, right? And then adjust, and that's what I thought. I thought it was the Department of Defense.
And that's not the way they work.
I don't know. But that's what I didn't come away from that going, I just saw a UFO. Looking, that was in the moment. we were all talking. There were some guys there that were saying UFO. I wasn't, of all people, right? Anyway, looking back at that, I wish I would have taken a picture. I had my cell phone, and I
If you'd have pulled that out based on the size that you said it was, I mean, it's like trying to photograph a garden pea from 30 yards. You're not going to be able to tell anything.
Yeah.
And as good as these are now, they're not that,
Right.
And that's one thing that makes it so hard. We have all these cameras, is what we say, but we have no evidence. It doesn't make sense. Well, it's because we don't have, telescopes with cameras attached to it. We're not walking around with a 200-time telescope so that we can capture exactly what we're seeing. Even if we are, we don't have time to set it up to get the shot that we want. Now, are you able to share photos on here?
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you a couple of pictures real quick.
Yeah, email them to me. And while you're doing that, I'll share this with you too as well. When the audience is going to go not again, but so I'm not going to tell the whole story, but there is the part of the story about being aware. I for some reason, I think there's some kind of conscious connection. Like they know now. There's millions of people down on the ground, UFO up in the sky. How do they know who's being photographed or who's taking out their cell phones? I don't know. I don't know how that's done. I don't. But we had a sighting up in the Northwest, and there was like 30 of us. The sighting itself was slow. Okay. And when it popped up and I saw it and I pointed, I yelled, and I screamed, and it was giant. It was huge, like 500-foot tall thing. And it's moving slowly across the blue sky. And while I'm yelling, right, I come back. It's like 5-10 seconds later. We're all talking about it. We're all looking at it. I've got binoculars. I go back and I'm yelling video, video, video. I go back. And as I go to look at the binoculars again, and I'm yelling video and pictures, right, to everybody, it disappeared. It disappeared. I've got the video. I've got a video of somebody, and you can hear us all talking and reacting. You know what the video is? Somebody shooting like this, because they don't know what they're shooting. They don't know. They didn't go exactly where. You know what I mean? But you can hear the audio. You can hear the audio of everybody talking about what they're seeing. But and then in the video, it disappeared. I was like, what? It disappeared. It just phased out. What do you mean it phased out? And it was just moving slowly across the blue sky. I thought we were going to look at it, Bill, for an hour. Okay, let's see here. Let's see what we got. Oh, really? Okay. Hold the phone, folks. Let me see this other one. Really?
That was outside of Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay. All right. Let's go to image number 1. This is good stuff, man. All right. What the heck is going on here? Da 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 da. Okay. Let me get this prepped. All right. So that's the full image. There it is.
And that's the sun that you see there.
Right.
So this is at 1/8,000th of a second shutter speed.
Right.
And like f11 or f16 as far as the aperture.
Now, what were you? Wait till you guys see the second image. What made you shoot this first one?
I was testing. So I shoot like this April. I'm going to be headed out west to catch the eclipse. So I do some of that type photography, and So I was just testing some stuff with the sun with this actually. And I had about maybe 1,000 frames. And then I had these 2 frames in the middle of all of it.
Wow. Okay. And that's the sun there.
Right.
And you did not see this, or did you see this?
I did not. This was a bright bluebird sky.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so now let me pull up this next image. And this is crazy town, man. This is tasty. I love this. Okay, it's going to take me a second, everybody. Just don't freak out.
I'm going to send you one more photo here in just a second.
Okay. Yeah, this is a tasty shot right here. Jimmy likes this one. I like the other one too. But you guys ready? Here we go. Bam. All right. So we've got an object reflecting the sun. It's solid. What do you think we're looking at here?
And the other one, I think, was the first shot. This is the second shot. And this is about 1/9 of a second apart because it shoots 9 frames per second.
So it moved across the sun in that,
right.
in that.
And 1/9 of a second. Yeah, 1/10 of a second.
Oh, look at that. Wow. Wow.
And I just emailed you one more. And this is what I captured down in Austin. And I'll tell you where to look at on it once you pull it up.
Wow. That's a beautiful catch, man. That's a beautiful catch. Okay, let's see what Bill's got next.
Now, sadly, this one that you'll have is from my cell phone. This is when I was trying to video, and I could not get the video to work, but I did capture 2 stills. This is one of those stills.
Okay, here we go. This is tasty too. This is a good shot. This is a good shot. You got lucky, man. You got lucky. Okay, this is Austin, and all of this is within the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go.
Zoom in above that tree, you see that little white dot?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that's the metallic orb that, I'm sitting here. At first, I'm thinking, is it a Mylar balloon? But it's not moving. You see it up there?
Oh, yeah. I'm zoomed in on it. That looks really big to be a Mylar balloon.
Yeah.
And so if you
there's power lines. There's power lines at this intersection, but the poles aren't as high as what that is. So it can't be on the power lines. And most of the time you don't see those balls are usually like orange.
And they're round. This is flat on the sides. Yeah, that's a good catch, man. And you see the crane in the background that's in between the power lines and the tree. By the way, so you can see the sign, something, and maintenance, right?
Yep.
Okay, so they're doing but look at the crane, the earth mover crane deal on treads. And that object is behind the tree. Doesn't look like it's above the tree.
Right.
So just in the triangulation of the basic stuff here, you need a photo expert. But if the crane is here and it's that size and this object is up in the sky, this thing is big. I think that's much bigger than what you think.
And it stayed in that exact spot through, basically half of a light cycle, through a, red light cycle. And then the light turned green, so I had to go forward. And after I went through the intersection, I pulled off to the right. Now, there's not like a lot of development here. It's land like that, but there's a Dollar General back behind me and to the left. So I pulled over on the side of the road, got out, and I couldn't find it. So when traffic allowed, I flipped around, drove back to the Dollar General, looped around in their parking lot, and then kind of timed it where I would be at that stoplight again, so I could sit there and try to study the sky there and see if I could spot it. And it was gone.
Yeah, it's a good catch. That's a good catch. When I was, we need to break for a commercial, and we'll do that in a second. Again, I don't want to bore everybody, but when I was meeting, I'll skip over the story. I was looking at homes here in Palmdale, and so this was before I moved to Palmdale. All right, like a month before. But I decide one of the reasons why I moved to Palmdale is because of the stories, the urban legend, right, of this area. I was just watching the movie with Lee Majors, Starliner, where they have the first supersonic thing they fly, and the rockets don't turn off and the engines, and it flies out into Earth's. It flies into space, right? Okay, so anyway, from 1972, 1974. I'm watching that movie, but guess what? Guess where it's based out of? Palmdale, right? It's always Palmdale. Everything is always Palmdale. That's why I wanted to move here. You know, everything is here. Edwards and Skunk Works and the rumors and the stories and things.
And beautiful black skies at night.
Oh man,
it's good dark skies.
Good dark skies. My backyard is so much fun at night. So anyway, I decide that I'm staying in a hotel for a night, and I decide that I want like In-N-Out burger. That was on my mind, and so I get up. I was like, man, let's go to In-N-Out. So I go down in the parking lot, and while I'm in the parking lot, I was like, man, Edwards Air Force Base is right there. All right, I'll get the burger later. Let's drive to Edwards. It's like going to Area 51, right? You know, and I'm out here. So I drive out, park my Jeep. I follow my GPS. I'm out in the middle of the desert. I don't know that until the next day when I went out there. But I pull up not a dirt road. I pull into the dirt next to the road. I go across the street, and I could see over the desert out in the distance is Edwards, and it's lit up. It's about this big. And I'm just standing there like, cool. And but I'm standing at the fence line with those warning signs that say warning, restricted area. It's unlawful to enter without, use of deadly force authorized, And I'm looking at those signs. I'm like, wow, man. They're taking this stuff serious. So as I'm looking at the sign, standing at the fence line and looking at Edwards, right above Edwards, like 10 degrees up, I see this static like on a TV in the sky. Wow. And so that catches my attention, and I'm looking at it's just like static on a TV. And as I'm looking at that, then this ring of lights goes blank, out, dark, just like that. Like, what? And so I'm standing, and I was like, okay, and I got my cell phone in my hand, not even thinking about it. My arms are at my side, and I was like, huh. And it was probably maybe a minute later, as I live and breathe, right? It does it again. Static. Black. I was like, oh, let's get the video out, right? I get my phone, I get the video ready, and I wait. Nothing. I stand there for 20 minutes. Nothing. And I turn around, I get in my Jeep. And even then, Bill, I wasn't thinking UFO. I didn't think that till the next day. I thought it was Edwards, and it was some kind of warning lights for airplanes or something. I'm rationalizing it in my head. Plus, I wanted In-N-Out burger, and I was on a journey.
You were hungry.
But when you least expect it, it was there. I get the phone ready, right? I'm like ready to go. Nothing. I can't explain it. I don't know. And I've heard every type of sighting. I've seen every kind of thing, but I've never seen anything like that. And it still sounds weird coming out of my mouth. It's I'm trying to explain, imagine the shape of a football, I guess, with static inside of it. Like an eye, maybe, you know what I mean? Like shaped like that.
Yeah.
But with this, and the static kind of rose. It wasn't like on instantly. It was like black.
Yep.
and man, I just sound like the craziest person. But it's my story, and that's why I listen to everybody. That's why I listen to you. And that's why I'm looking at your photographs and sharing them, because my stuff is crazy town. And I
mean, there's things we can't explain. So technically the stuff that I have the pictures of in front of the sun, they're UFOs because I can't explain them. I did check to see if like the ISS was traveling by during that time that day, and it was nowhere near where I was. But we have so much space debris, and I had one person tell me he thought it was a fly, but it's clearly not a fly. So who knows?
Yeah, well, there are there has been some very strange UFO video photographs that I have looked at over the years. And then I've had a series of, I was presented a photograph. I was like, wow, dude, that's amazing. That's totally amazing. He goes, it's a seagull. I go, no, it's not. Look, it's and I'm just, he goes, yeah, but I made it out of focus. Here's the actual photograph.
Yeah.
Right. The one that wasn't defocused, and it's a seagull. It is. And now it was a clever way. This was somebody that is a complete bonehead debunking skeptic. Okay. Yeah. All right. I get that. But it was them reversing it on me. Right. Saying, okay, see, this is how, well, yeah, I get that, but that doesn't change what I have seen.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't. And you're always going to have people that, and I've presented stuff that I've shot. I've stopped doing it because there's too much divide that happens. People end up arguing about it. The people that just they don't want to believe anything, so they present and it's the same stuff that you're up against, right? And
honestly, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is individually your mind is trying to rationalize what you see. Well, once you have seen something that you can't rationalize, then it's easier to misconstrue other things, right? Because now your mind is rationalizing it that it's something that can be unexplained. So it can be, somebody from the moon Titan or, whatever.
Right.
Sagittarius, because you've had that experience where it's really gotten into you.
That's right. Well, you mentioned the jellyfish video. Mm-hmm. And even for me, look, I've seen crazy stuff. I'm sitting here telling you that I just saw this staticky thing with the ring of lights and then disappear, right? Okay, that's crazy town. That's crazy talk. It's crazy talk. But it happened. And then I turn around, and when I see you're a filmmaker. When I see the jellyfish, that's what it's called. So it doesn't look like a jellyfish. It's been given that name. And now everybody knows the video that I'm talking about. That image that is in the so-called, the anomalous portion of that, it doesn't change. That's what's really strange. It goes, it never, if I move this cup, you see this side right here? You see that light up? All right. I'm not spinning the cup, but it looks like I am. I'm just moving it across the camera flat. This is moving flat across, right? You see it change? That object doesn't do that. Yeah. That is a flat, that it looks like something is taped to an eyeball.
And that's what they said is it looks like it's a smudge, is what a lot of people have said.
It could, well, yeah. I haven't read the critique of it. I just need to stay away from it, because when I watched the video on whatever News Nation or wherever it was, I saw it in the media. I'm staying away from social media on this. I'm not going to get in the arguments. I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to get started. I depend on my eyeballs. And when I see something doing something completely unnatural, which is not, if it's 3D and it's out there in space, you're going to see it, even though I'm moving this flat, right, across the screen. This is just going straight across. But you see that not one, my eyes are seeing something flat. Like it's like traveling like this. Yeah. You know what I mean? It doesn't change.
It's a weird looking video. And again, I'm not a forensic expert on figuring out what the jellyfish is, but it just seems very, very odd.
Yeah, and look, maybe something interdimensional, is something that would confuse me and confuse everybody else, and I don't understand what I'm looking at. Okay, all right, I'm with you on that. Right? Everything is possible, and everything will happen. It's just that my eyes, when I saw that, my brain just shut down. It just didn't. It looked like if you were shooting, if you have a camera behind glass and you have a piece of tape on the glass, right? And you're shooting, and that tape is now not moving, right? But you're shooting through the glass.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's what that reminded me of. So maybe, I didn't even think about that. Maybe the camera on this drone is in a housing, a weatherproof housing, and it's shooting. That sounds. Possibly, I don't think it's on the lens. It might be something on. But anyway, back to the point that I was making is that this stuff happens all the time, where people photograph stuff. And the debunkers come in, and because the debunkers have their cognitive dissonance, their hat on, their blinders, where they won't accept anything else. Therefore, because their brain is now wired that way, it could be an actual alien ET flying saucer, but they don't see it. Right? It doesn't register to them.
Just like with politics, it's usually somewhere in the middle is where you need to be. We don't need to believe everything we see, but we don't need to discredit everything that's out there either.
That's the best place
to be. Really kind of need to, dig into it and figure it out. Now, and that's one thing that I may do that I'm kind of looking at in the future as I keep diving into the UFO and UAP and abduction side of it, is trying to piece all this together. But the thing is, this stuff's been going on in the U.S. since the 40s with Roswell, right? Everything's a conspiracy theory regarding UFOs. You're not going to come up to a real conclusion on it because you can't explain it all. And if you can, the stuff you can explain, you're going to have the people that say he doesn't believe in it. He's a skeptic and he's just never going to believe anything. And then if you conclude that it is something, then you're going to have people that say, so I can take a pie plate and throw it in the air and you're going to think it's a UFO. I can take you to a disc golf course and you're going to think there's a bunch of UFOs flying around hitting chains, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's so true. And even Billy Carson, who not only is he a great friend, but he's got a complete open mind, but he will call BS on the drop of a hat. Okay. So we are out. We get, this is earlier in the middle of the summer last year, like June of 2023. So 6 months ago, we are out in Palm Springs and we get 20 people from around the country together for a weekend of sky watching in Palm Springs. Okay. And we're out doing our things and we go out to Giant Rock. Okay. Which is pretty cool. The Integratron. We go out to Giant Rock on top of this hill. And Billy, we are UFO hunting with friends. We've got dinner with things. They're on the top of this mountain. We've got night vision and lasers, and we're there to see this stuff, right? Well, this is what happens to Billy. We see this it's coming from the west. It's just getting dark. It's about 9:00, but from the west, on the horizon, it's still a little blue and orange. The sun is, you know what I mean? Just out there above us, it's black, right? It's night sky. But from the west, in that blue orange, there's this gold light, and it's coming right at us, and it's a ways away, but it's bright. It's like weird, and it's orange, orange, not white. It's orange. It's coming at us. It's got all of our attention, and we're on the top of this mountain, and we're looking at it. And Billy says, "We've all got lasers, right? Right? We've all got lasers." And Billy, who's standing next to me, Billy goes, "Okay, everybody." He's camp counselor. "Nobody shine their lasers on it because it's an airplane, and we don't want to get in any trouble out here." We're like, "Oh, Dad, buzzkill, right?" Okay, and I'm looking. I'm not. You sure it's a plane, Jimmy? It's a plane. It's a plane. I'm like, okay, all right. It's a plane. All right, Billy. It's a plane. No lasers. Everybody, this thing comes right over us. Bill comes right up, and now and I got the night vision. I'm like, dude, there's no lights on that. That's not a plane. And as I say this, and now it's right above us, and it's pretty good size. It's low. I'm going to say a few thousand feet, not very high, but glowing orange ball. Anyway, so it gets right above us and then turns and goes straight up and turns into a star and disappears. And Billy asked for it. He got slapped upside his head. He asked for it. And then he goes, and I'm going to quote him. He goes, "I reserve the right to say that was not a plane." It was hilarious. And the whole thing lasted, this is probably like 5 minutes. 5 minutes. It was like a long thing. It was just incredible. It was incredible. And that's when you stop and you go, okay, I don't know what that was. I can tell you what it wasn't, right? It wasn't a plane, wasn't a rocket, wasn't a helicopter, wasn't a missile, it wasn't SpaceX, wasn't any of that. It was very low at first. It was in our atmosphere, and that sucker turned and it took its time coming towards us, but then it just, yeah, bizarre. So what do you do with it?
we've got the Brown Mountain Lights here in North Carolina.
Right.
And, this is what it was. It was swamp gas.
And I understand the brain. No, I don't understand the brain, but I understand that our brain tries to protect us.
It tries to rationalize what we see.
Tries to. Or we're all in the loony bin. We're all wearing extra large white shirts, right? with long sleeves, Hey Jimmy, you feeling okay, buddy? Why don't you come over here, step closer to the van? Here, try this shirt on.
We're going to use you as an extra at the Arkham Asylum in the next Batman movie.
Right. So I get that. I totally get that. And in the moment, Billy rationalizing, it's an airplane, because we were all looking at it. We're looking at all these stars, all this thing, and suddenly, out there, this bright orange ball coming at us, just very low out, just straight at us. Yeah, it was bizarre. It was mad. And your brain is going to, what do you do? So you have to go and watch the audience. I'm speaking to the audience, and you too, Bill. My TV show Into the Vortex over on Gaia, because that sighting is part of the regression that I did with Sarah Breskman Cosme on camera, and which came out of the blue. So what was really involved with that? What may be involved with that? What was it? Go watch that episode of Into the Vortex with Sarah Breskman Cosme, because I had no idea. This stuff just started coming out of me. And that whole experience is very strange to me now. It's very strange. I don't know. And with let's get back to encounters real quick before we run out of time. Great conversation tonight, Bill. So you mentioned family members. Now, how did that happen, and what's their story? I know that it hasn't been released yet, but is that a comfortable zone for you to go into with family members? And how did
it was a family? It was a family of 3 that I interviewed. It wasn't my family.
Oh, I thought it was your family. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you're crazy. You got your family? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So it was a family of. It wasn't 3.
The family of 3. There's their experience happened in California. The name of the town starts with a GU, and I can't think of it right now. But yeah, it happened in California, and they saw a light. Some other people on the road saw a light. Everybody pulled over and looked at it. They exchanged. I mean, they were scared to death. They exchanged their stories later when they got home. They didn't talk about it on the way home. But yeah, it was an interesting story. Sure was. What episode? That's the 3rd episode of season 2. Yep.
So what happened?
It's kind of like what you said with the orange light that you saw. They had something that at first they thought maybe it could have been a helicopter, but it just kept getting bigger and brighter and brighter and brighter. And then it, makes a 90-degree turn up and it's gone. But it scared them to death. I mean, that like they were pulling people back into the car because they were scared of what was happening. The other cars on the road, the people that had gotten out, jumping in the cars and, were taking off because it was not a helicopter. It was not a military aircraft. They don't behave that way.
Somebody just posted, 3 nights ago, I was looking up at the stars and saw an orange light about the size of a star moving fast. It slowed down to a stop, moved about up and down, and then shot off behind a cloud. Happens all the time.
Probably Jupiter.
Yeah, It was Venus. It was Venus. The historical parts of this, because today scientifically, even the average person scientifically can think a little bit differently than we did just even 50 years ago or 100 years ago or 200 years ago, which is, interdimensional portal, parallel world, plasma light, the ball lightning. There are ways that we can get the physics and the quantum side. Forget about Newton, right? Everybody can walk around these days and think these thoughts. Everybody has seen everything everywhere all at once, right? So everybody's watched Marvel movies and Doctor Strange. So you have the ability to think a little bit differently about what but historically they've been seeing this forever. This isn't a new phenomenon.
It goes back to the Sumerians. I mean, the first type of script of historical records it goes back to. I mean, out west, it's fascinating seeing some of the petroglyphs and stuff that you're looking at it and going, man, that looks very familiar to today's age as far as the shape of the person. And, it looks like a rocket ship behind them. There's no telling. It could be a fat tree for all we know, right? Because this was done 5,000 years ago. But again, our mind is trying to rationalize. We're into this sci-fi world now. We're more into science. I mean, sprites, the lights above the clouds, they've been reported for 30, 40 years, but they've only recently been photographed to where meteorologists and scientists can say, yeah, those are real things. I mean, can you imagine if you had somebody in the 1200s that was, say, near the equator, and somehow they end up in Norway and see the Northern Lights? It would blow their mind.
Blow their minds. And if we go into the historical record and look at let's actually do this in real time together, right? First balloon flight. All right, you ready? The first balloon flight in history, September 19th, 1783. Now, to me, that's a key date in human history. September 19th, 1783, right? And it happened in France. Now, we've talked about this a lot. 1783. Okay. Before 1783, technically, right? Before 1783, before 1780, before 1775, let's give it an extra 10 years. Technically, there was nothing in the sky but nature.
And chariots driven by the gods.
Yeah, right. So that's it. That's it. Birds, insects, other flying squirrels. but
no Walmart bags getting taken up by the heat.
So what were they seeing before 1783? After 1783, the imagination is taking off, and people are testing things, and mad scientists building stuff in their barns. Okay, all right, I get that. Everybody's trying to build a balloon, and everybody's trying to fly. I get that. I understand. All right, so after that, but before that, we have got millions of eyewitness accounts of things in the sky.
And
that should have been there.
Yeah, let's put this into perspective as well. look at when they're the first street lights. And I'm talking about they can be candlelit street lights in London, right? That's a very recent phenomenon. So you didn't have night light. Where you live, you can see the dark skies.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us can't. And if you step outside on a dark sky and you step outside, even in a small town like where I am, with about 50,000, I can't see nearly the number of stars that you can. I also can't see nearly the number of just lights in the sky. And, we talk about like meteor showers. You can see meteors throughout the year. It doesn't have to be during a meteor shower if you have a dark enough sky. You go to the Grand Canyon and throw up let me put this camera up for a time lapse overnight and try to do like a night to day. I will catch lots and lots of meteors and lights that streaks across the sky that aren't airplanes, because it's a dark sky and you can see it. Now, if there are alien spacecraft, it's just like how we see satellites. There's no reason for an alien to have a light on a spacecraft that's up, the upper atmosphere. It's a navigation light for an alien, especially if we go back to, say, the 15, 16, 1700s. There's no reason for it. But what you can see is the reflection of the sun, because it's so far up in the atmosphere that it still has sunlight hitting it, where it's the dead of night here. And you see that when you have a dark sky. But, one of the things that I found interesting is my oldest son was in high school. His teacher, they were talking about space. So it was one of his science classes. And somebody asked why they call it the Milky Way. And they said, well, when you look through a telescope, you can kind of see it. And my son was like, no, you can actually see it with your bare eyes. And she got mad at him about it. And you can't see the Milky Way with your bare eyes. So, oh yeah, you can if you go to a dark enough spot. A dark enough spot, you can see it very clearly. But can you imagine what they may have seen? I mean, meteors streaking across the sky for one thing, but
yeah. When there was no light,
when there's no light to interfere,
no campfires, right? I'm talking about nothing. And it is so dramatic. I love to see people's faces for the first time when they see the edge of the Milky Way for the first time. And you see that just stretching across. It's the most incredible. The colors, too, as well. It's
exactly.
Just... and you see it for the first. Just imagine, and that's with the bull crap situation that we have with light pollution today. Can you imagine 200 years ago, 250 years ago?
I mean, it would be incredible sight. But you could see, if there was something there, you would be able to see it. Sadly, you wouldn't be able to capture it because we didn't have cameras.
I was out.
So what do? You paint it.
Yeah, exactly right. Or etch it or woodcut, right. Draw it. I was out on my back deck on the second floor, and this was last year. And I'm out there. I got my night vision, and it's probably I have to think about the phone call because I made notes. But I'm gonna say it was like 11:30 or something. But anyway, I'm looking north, and I just happened to be looking north. I wasn't looking north for any reason, but I was looking north. And as I sit here, and this is exactly how it went down and how long it lasted. From the horizon, I could see the tops of the mountains. I'm looking at the night sky behind it. So due north from behind the mountains, this white ball of light comes out, goes across the sky, and goes out of view behind me, behind the mountain. Okay, traverses the sky like this. And it was as fast as what I'm doing right now. Think about that for a second. We're talking about thousands of miles. And it took this long. And it was just a white ball. It wasn't streaking. It wasn't doing anything. Okay, so anyway, it goes. And I was like, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. Oh, gone. Whoa. And as I'm like, and I mean, hair stood, I was like, that was crazy. Right as I have that thought, it happens again. Right? Goes right across, same thing, and goes right behind me. And I run in the house, I write everything down, and I write Avi Loeb an email. Avi, dude, right now, at this time, 2 objects. And I gave him everything. The next day he calls me. He goes, so got your email. What happened? I told him, again, I repeat, he goes, we got nothing. I go, that's impossible, Avi. It happened twice, and it shot past Earth. Now, this wasn't in our atmosphere. This is something that went past Earth.
Yeah.
You know, and I had everything. I had location. I had the time. It happened twice, not once, twice, back to back. And whoa, right? Now, that's what I saw on 11:30 at night in the middle of July.
Yep.
This goes on every single night, like the meteor showers that you're talking about.
Yep.
What were the ancients doing? The ancients were looking at the sky every single night. They were seeing crazy stuff all the time.
When I was filming The Incredulous Case, and I was trying to get some extra footage to put that together for that mockumentary, I was in Roswell and stayed in Roswell overnight, and stayed just about 15 miles outside of Roswell. And there was a rest area there, and I've got a rooftop tent on my truck, so I'm gonna sleep in that. But I set the cameras up and got them where if somebody pulls into the rest stop, I don't have to worry about them finding it and stealing anything like that. But I put them on time lapse. But before I did that, as I set the cameras up, I saw like one satellite go over, and I was like, I need to get that because I can use that for part of my story. And then I had 2 lights that were traveling in a north to south orientation, which satellites usually are
East-west.
West, it's either east-west or west-east. I can't remember. But these, it's west to east usually is the way it goes. Well, these were north to south, and they were side by side. And I pulled up the tracker to see if I could see what satellites they were, because usually you don't see them in pairs. And, I had one friend that said probably a Chinese satellite spying on an American satellite, but even with that, it's not normally a north to south orientation, although there are. Well, I think I figured it out. The tracker wouldn't tell me what they were, but there is some twin satellite systems, but it made great footage. And I did that without a time lapse. I did that, actually turned it on the camera and videoed and watched them go through. I put a 150 to 600 millimeter lens on the camera, so I zoomed in just as far as I could so it filled the frame. But the thing is, you have dark skies, and you can see that. This happens everywhere. It's just, it does not take much light for our eyes not to be able to see it.
Yeah, I remember when, and we're out of time. And thank you.
Yeah.
But I'll say this really quick. And everybody, Bill's website, the links are below. And you can check out his stuff over on 2B too as well. And again, before I forget, I put up the link for IMDb, The Incredulous Case of Aliens, the U.S. Government, and Arnie Smith. That IMDb page is there, so everybody can remember the name and go and find it on Tubi. He said it's on Amazon. It's probably, I don't even want to say it might even be on YouTube. I don't know. But anyway, there's the title for it right there. But yeah, I've seen the twin satellite stuff with night vision a lot, and I think that's we're following a Russian satellite or a Russian satellite's following one of ours. And for sure, I've seen that. But I've seen other stuff too that I can't explain. So
I did want to make one mention.
Yes.
The Encounters that came on Netflix by Steven Spielberg. Mine came out before his. Mine was named Encounters before Steven Spielberg named his Encounters.
Spielberg does that all the time. His next movie is going to be called Fade to Black. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Exactly.
Bill,
Ride his
great
coattails.
I look forward to our next conversation, my friend. And when you do launch season 2, let me know, and we'll bring you back on. We'll talk about it.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you so much,
Thanks
Bill.
very much, Jimmy.
Good luck to you,
for
my
everybody
friend.
that watched.
You're the best. Great conversation tonight. Great conversation. I had so much fun. So much fun. I blew through the commercial. But you know what? I can do that. These days, I just don't. Nothing affects me. Nothing bothers me. What am I doing tomorrow night? Does anybody know what I am doing tomorrow night? Hold on. I'll tell you right now. Tomorrow night is, that's right. Tomorrow night, Jonathan Young is here. Oh, yeah. Joseph Campbell. We're going to talk about mythology and folklore tomorrow night with the one and only Dr. Jonathan Young from Ancient Aliens. So I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jonacide. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. That's right. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with Jonathan Young, I want you to be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.